Thank you so very much for being here. Okay, you guys, that's right, Matthew. It's time to get this party started. We are at the top of the hour. So, again, everyone, thank you all so very much for joining us on our February edition of the ILCA 5-Day Challenge. My name is Miss Marnita Casa, and I am your humble hostess for this evening. Now, it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce you all to a man that for over 25 years dominated the direct sales industry. His cryptocurrency education is being used by companies and universities worldwide. Now, for over 6 years, he dedicated his life to learning about cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, but he didn't just stop there. He decided to go out, share his information with the masses, and he did this by putting on fun and exciting Bitcoin boot camps nationwide at no cost. He has built thriving communities and wonderful platforms like you see before you now. So without further ado, it is my honor to introduce you all to Mr. Brandon Ivey.
All right, all right. Thank you, Miss Casa. Oh no, my camera's acting funny. It was just fine just a second ago. All right, I'm gonna see how I can deal with this one. I don't want to have to do this whole thing with my camera off. I'll reset myself when I bring up Professor Sistrunk. But anyways, welcome everybody. This is day 2 of our 5-day challenge. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule for being here. I see Miss Casa has a brand new ILCA shirt on. I like it. I like that one. So welcome everybody. Thank you for turning your cameras on. We had a great start last night on our day 1 where we talked about how do cryptocurrencies even work? What are cryptocurrencies? So we did that last night, and I think that was, that's a lesson we've done more than 20 times in the last 2 years. However, each one is different, and you learn something different every single time. And you guys on the Q&A side were able to ask some great questions, have some good aha moments that I very much appreciate. And we're going to keep that going tonight in honor of Black History Month also. I just came off of a presentation for the DFY system and saw my name up there on the leaderboards. That got me excited. So I decided to make this public again tonight for our 5-day challenge. We're streaming on all the Facebook groups. I won't turn off the stream, but only the VIP members are going to be able to ask questions. Those of you that are on Zoom with us, you'll be able to ask questions to myself and Professor Sistrunk at the end. And speaking of Professor Sistrunk, when we might even have some new people that's going to be joining us tonight. If this is your very first time seeing the 5-day challenge, we welcome you. This is designed to be an introduction to cryptocurrencies for beginners and those people who believe that you are experts in the field. This is designed to get your foot in the door because you're going to be hearing about this everywhere. It's not going anywhere. It's starting to become into the political discourse as well. And we need to know and be exposed to what's going on. It's one thing to miss the boat because you forgot to buy a ticket. It's another to miss the boat because you bought a plane ticket and you're not even nowhere near the shore. You don't even know what's going on. And that's our job. We want to expose you to what's going on in this space. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring up our guest speaker tonight, and I'm going to reboot myself so I get my camera working properly. But the gentleman I want to bring up, I have a lot of respect for. One, because this is in honor of Black History Month. This is a Morehouse special. We're going to have Morehouse panelists and guests throughout this week. Tonight we have Professor Sistrunk. Tomorrow we've got my old freshman year Morehouse roommate from San Diego, who a few years ago was alumni of the year of Morehouse College, Lamar Slater. On Thursday night, we're having Brother Eric Guthrie. He's a lawyer. He's written 2 books on blockchain and crypto, and he's got a brand new course coming out as well he wants to share with you guys. And then Friday, we have another Morehouse brother, Brother Marlon, out of Atlanta, who has his own blockchain physical training academy in Atlanta, Georgia. So we've got a stacked this whole week that you're going to be able to listen to. So thank you guys for being here. So first and foremost, I want to bring up, it's one thing to be a Morehouse man, it's another to teach Morehouse men. And this gentleman is not only a Morehouse graduate, he graduated from Morehouse in the 70s, but he decided to come back and lend his talent knowledge, expertise, and energy to shape the future of future Morehouse men for the last 30 plus years. He has a background in real estate as well. And right now, he is very, very focused on the Bitcoin halving event, especially that's coming up in just a matter of weeks. Professor Sistrunk, I want to bring you up, but before you get into the Bitcoin halving, please share with everybody your background. You know how you went to Morehouse, why you got into real estate, and why you got into crypto. Why you believe cryptocurrency education is important, and then that gives me time to reboot myself. So when I come back, I can pull your slides up and you can show off the Bitcoin halving. So everybody, give a warm welcome to Professor Oscar Sistrunk. You're muted. You're muted.
I wanted to make sure that I didn't have much background while you were talking, but thank you very much. I'll talk a little bit. You know, a professor can talk all day, so you take your time, and when you're back, then we'll get ready to go. But yes, my name is Oscar Sistrunk. I'm from New Jersey, but in 1974, I can't believe it was that long ago, I went to Morehouse College. And I tell people I really don't tell the truth. I'm going to tell the truth here. The reason I chose Atlanta was what I call the two W's, the weather and the women. I'm sitting outside right now, and it's just beautiful out here for February. Are you kidding me? Growing up in New Jersey, we'd be freezing to death. I'm sitting out here probably, I don't know, must be 60-something degrees, just relaxing, been out all day. Taught a class earlier this evening. But I graduated from Morehouse, then I went to graduate school here in Atlanta. Once I got to Atlanta, I said, I'm not leaving. Like I said, I came to Atlanta for the two W's, the weather, and the other W was the women. I said, gee whiz, I'm not going anywhere. I can find me a good country girl here in Atlanta, which is what I did. So I've been here ever since. I went to graduate school, and then I started teaching at Morehouse in the business department way back in 1980. Can't believe it. And at the same time, I was 24 years old, and I bought my first rental property. And so I've been in real estate. I'm a commercial real estate appraiser. I was a full-time college professor until 2015. And then I kind of retired because all my bosses retired. So I decided I think I'll go out with them. I did commercial real estate. Then towards the end of teaching at Morehouse, which was 2015, in 2014, I started teaching about something called Bitcoin. And I started teaching that to my students at Morehouse. I remember Bitcoin was $28. And $68. And I was talking to the students. I said, why don't you just, instead of taking that girl out one weekend to the movies and dinner, why don't you just bring her to your house and watch Netflix and take that $68 and buy one Bitcoin and see what happens? Who knows? And I've had, since then, early on, a lot of students did that advice. And as you can tell, they are happy as I don't know what. I did not get into Bitcoin until I saw my first Bitcoin ATM machine in 2017, 3 years later. And I saw some guys putting money into an ATM machine for Bitcoin. And they said they were buying Bitcoin. I said, you're buying it? I said, how much is it? And they told me it was $3,000. And I almost fainted right there. And I said, $3,000? And it then went down a little bit. And then, of course, that 2017, it took off to almost $20,000. So I said, I think I better learn something and get really interested in Bitcoin. And that's when I started learning about the 4-year cycle. And so in February of 2019, I started actually buying Bitcoin using Robinhood, just about $100 a month. And I remember Bitcoin was about 3,200. I started buying, and I learned the cycle and how it works, and realized that this is the fastest horse in the race. This is where you need to be investing your money. And it's early. So now's the time to learn. So I took some classes. I watched a lot of videos. I read books. I studied. I laid out my own spreadsheet so I could do my own analysis. You know, I'm kind of a geeky like that. So I get in there and get into Excel and start playing around with it and really began to learn how to use this and understand how the 4-year cycle works. So as Brandon was saying, this is an exciting time because the halving period is coming up starting next month, right? Which you can say, for me, is the beginning of this 4-year cycle. Of course, everybody's talking about it. It's funny. This happens all the time. People are going to start talking about where the price is going to go, what it's going to do. We now have ETFs. We might be seeing something different. I don't know what's going on with these prices and whether that's this ETF. But what the ETF allows us to do is access institutions. And those institutions now have an easy rail to invest in Bitcoin, and eventually Ethereum is coming. So I tell people now, this is the time to learn about it. It's still early, but it's not the first inning anymore. The big boys are coming in, and they've got enough money that if everybody's whatever price, they could buy all the Bitcoin. I'm thinking, and this is just me, you know, I remember I grew up in the 70s, so I got that Vietnam War kind of thing about always somebody lurking back in the woods behind me. But it is possible that these major institutions, these major financial institutions have the money, the billions of dollars, to basically get most people to sell all their crypto or all their Bitcoin. They could basically corner the market and then begin to use it, and you have to go through them as a gateway to get to the Bitcoin. If you understand what I'm saying, they could take it all and then create products using that cryptocurrency, and you wouldn't have your own keys. You could borrow their keys and use it, but you wouldn't have your own. So I'm telling people, you may want to, those that are already in it and you front run it, great. But everybody else, you need to take some classes, learn about it, and maybe you need to buy 1 Bitcoin or a half a Bitcoin over time. You don't have to buy it all right now. You can do it over time, just like I did. Start with $100 every month. But you may want to start, maybe, of course, now with a little bit more, but it doesn't matter. I say get in the game if you're not in it. The BlackRock and those guys have deep pockets. They can shake Bitcoin. I bet you if BlackRock just came along and said, I'll tell you what, we'll just buy Bitcoin from anybody who wants it for $200,000 a coin. How many people would say $200,000 a coin? Shoot, I'm selling. I bought it at $3,500. I'm gonna sell it $200,000, get wealthy, and I'm going down to St. Thomas and buy a house and live on the beach the rest of my life. That's great until you turn around years later and see that Bitcoin is now $1 million a coin, and BlackRock is now saying that you got to come through them to get it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the 4-year cycle, but I'm letting people know in general, now's the time to, if you're not in it, learn about it and get in it. Just like I told students when it was back at $68, what do you have to lose? Right? What do you have to lose? All right, I see Brandon has the screen back up, so let's get going. What I've been talking about the last few months is I've done some analysis and kind of laid out this 4-year cycle. We know that every 4 years, Bitcoin reduces in half the amount of Bitcoin that they kind of hand out to those people that solve the block. That's just a quick, short way of saying it. When you're able to lock that block, then you get a reward, which is Bitcoin. And in April, that reward gets cut in half. And then in 2028, it gets cut in half again. And then in 32, it gets cut in half again. So it keeps getting cut in half. And we already know what the supply of Bitcoin is going to be from now on and when it's going to be available. And once the last Bitcoin is minted, That's it. But in the meanwhile, demand is continuing to grow for it, and more uses are going to come out to use Bitcoin. And that's just going to drive the price up. But we know it follows a cycle. So what I did is this first chart looks at the Bitcoin price compared to the US dollar. And you can see how it goes up and down and up and down. But if we click on to the next slide, you'll see real quick, and this is kind of reviewing what we did last time before we get here to more new stuff, but this is for the new people. If we take that same data and put it on a logarithmic chart, you see how it lays out and really follows a pretty good trajectory. It's headed up. You can see where these bubbles pop up, but the Bitcoin price is headed upward. Let's move to the next one. If we were to then put I think this is a 90-day moving average, the red line running through it, notice something. That Bitcoin chart is either above or then goes below the red line. That's important to understand. But that 90-day average, what I try and do is I buy whenever it's below that 90-day average, and then I just hold on to it during the time when it's above the 90-day average. Notice now this chart's a little old, so we're now slightly above the 90-day average. So we're getting into that period of time where you should have been loading up on it, and now we're getting ready to go for a ride. Let's look at the next chart. The next chart, if we break it down, those parallel lines represent the three halvings. Notice something. When we have those halvings put in, each time within the halving, we see a bump up. So now, every 4 years, you get a bump up, and then it goes down, then it goes back up again, getting ready for the next halving. All right? Starting all the way back down in 2015. It bumps up, it then slides down, and then it tracks back up again. So it's following a cycle. Now, this last cycle, if you notice, we had a double peak. The double peak was probably due to because of the COVID money that was out. It peaked early the first time, and then kind of came down a little and peaked again, because remember, after the election or leading up to the election, we received more PPP money, and a lot of that money went into crypto. As a matter of fact, I had my daughters put their PPP money into a digital wallet and invest it into Bitcoin. And so they still have PPP money that they can draw on as it went down, but it's now coming back up, and they're almost back to their original PPP loan, even though they've been spending money all the time. So this thing, it does work. Let's go to the next the next chart. If we look at this chart and we look at Bitcoin price on a chart that looks at it by year, notice something. During the 4-year period, you can see a cycle, a system in place. Year one, number one is kind of green. Year two is a big green. Year three, you see a red, and then it comes back to a little green again. Notice that happens each time. So think about it. If we can figure out what the cycle is and we know what it's getting ready to do, we can plan our investment based on that. Right? So again, we can see how year one, it goes up a little bit. Year two is when it really takes off. It then backs up a year three and then comes back in year four. Isn't that interesting? Let's do the next slide. Here's something else I've discovered, and we talked about this last time. It's called the pi cycle chart. The pi cycle chart is an indicator that has picked the high and the low of the Bitcoin as it moves through its cycle. There's a lot of math behind it, but it's pretty basic. It's been correct 100% of the time. It has picked the low and it's picked the high. Now, in some cases, there was a double top, or in some cases, there was a double bottom, but it was right on target each time. So I recommend people, you get a charting service like TradingView or something, or you find a service, or there's some YouTubers that also will follow art, and it has been pretty good. If you when you're talking about it hasn't missed for the most part, 100% is pretty good. It's good until it's not any good. All right, next slide, if you wouldn't mind. All right, here we are. I also did a chart that's showing the Pi cycle chart with the Bitcoin price based on dollars. And I did a table. In that table, it might be hard to read, but what I did is I compared when the cycle said to sell versus when the top really occurred. And in the 4 cycle tops that we've had, it's only been off by 1 day, and it's only been off by 10%. Meaning, if you could pick the exact day of the halving of the top of the cycle, if you use the Pi cycle chart, you would have only been off by 1 day as an average, and the difference in the price was only about 10%. So I think that the indicator, that's a pretty good indicator when you're at about 90% and you're only off by a day. So let's move on to the next chart. So we can follow Bitcoin. We can use the Pi cycle top, and here's the bottom. Again, with that 90-day moving average, showing you how we can predict where Bitcoin is going. All right, next slide. All right, here's what I did. We've talked about this the last few months. I just want to go over it real quick before we get in depth and run out of time. But we have phase 1, in which the cycle, the halving starts, and we go 18 months. And during that 18 months is when we reach the Pi cycle chart top. That's when we reach 3x, 4x, 5x. So starting in April, if you go 18 months, you're going to go to about October of 2025. That's when we're going to reach our top. It's happened the last 3 times, and this time it looks like it could happen again. Let's go to the next slide. All right, phase 2, which we talked about last month. That's when Bitcoin takes the dive. It reaches the top. It kind of goes over the top. You get a lot of maybe illegal activity. You get a lot of bad systems in place, and eventually the Bitcoin will crumble. Normally, if you look the last 3 cycles, which we've only had 3 cycles, the decline was about 67%. It lasted 1 year, right? So if we figure that 2025, in that 4th quarter, we're going to reach the top, by the 4th quarter of 2026, we'll have reached the bottom. All right? That's what it's predicted the last 3 times, and it will probably happen again this time. Let's look at phase number 3, which we're going to talk about today. Phase number 3 is that period. Okay, if you could change that slide for me. Let's get this. There we go. This is the last slide. This is what's going on now. We're in phase 3. So we did 18 months after the halving, in which it reached the top, 12 months after the top where it reached the bottom, and then all the way till the next halving, we see that we are going to have green again. And during that period of time is when you start really beginning to buy again for the cycle to occur. Normally at this point, if you remember the beginning of phase 3, everybody's all stressed out. FTX, Celsius, all these companies, BlockFi had gone bankrupt. A lot of people lost their money, and they're all upset. But if you know what's going on, after, what was that, October, after 4th quarter of 26, is when we need to go ahead and start buying again. We're at the bottom, and we know that we're going to come for that halving in 2028, and we start accumulating Bitcoin, coins again. And what we'll see now, of course, the halving is just a little bit away. Something really interesting has happened. For the first time, before we get to the halving, we may be close to the all-time high. Bitcoin has taken off. Why is that? Before it took off, but not like it's taken off now, I think it's because of the ETF, meaning we have a rail now for institutions who understand this stuff to say, I better get in now before the next 18-month run-up. Remember that phase one that's going to occur and going to start next month? They're front-running it. Now's the time to get in, and you're going to see all kinds of institutions, universities, nonprofit organizations, family money, other, older people who didn't want to get into wallets and that kind of stuff. They'll just use ETFs. And you can see now we've gone from the mid 40s into the almost high 50s within a month. There is no telling where this is going to go, but it could start that FOMO pretty early. That's what's going to make this 18 months really take off. Is people, FOMO stands for the fear of missing out. People are going to start talking about, I bought Bitcoin at 50 or at 60. It's now at, who knows, whatever that number is. They're going to tell their friends. Their friends are going to call their investment houses and say, I want some of that ETF. Put some of my money in the Bitcoin ETF. And people who couldn't get in there before are going to do that. And then you're going to have institutions say, well, maybe I'll put 0.5% or 1% of my money in there. That's billions and trillions of dollars, which will move that number and the value of Bitcoin very quickly. So again, I would learn, I'd take these classes, I would watch the YouTube videos, I would read all I could, because I think we've got probably just 5-6 more months before this thing is going to be really out of sight, and people are going to do what many people do is they buy at the top and sell at the bottom. You don't want to do that. You want to buy at the bottom and sell at the top. And really, you don't ever want to sell. You want it. For me, Bitcoin is my multi-generational wealth. I'm buying these Bitcoin for my grandchildren. And I don't mind if it cycles up and down. I wait for it to cycle down, I buy more. Cycle down and I buy more. And that is my goal and what I plan to do. I have one last slide and I'm going to turn it over to Brandon. This is a summary which shows you, based on a chart, kind of putting it all together, where you see phase 1, 2, and 3, and you see how it works the same each time. And even the dates, and like I said, the months in terms of the time period is very simple. Why? Because supply, price is based on supply and demand. We already know what the supply is, so it's all demand driven. And demand driven is based on human nature. Human nature doesn't change. In these first 18 months, it's going to get started. People are going to get greedy. It's going to go over the top. Then the next 12 months, it's going to collapse. Everybody's going to be crying. Everybody's going to sell. Everybody's going to, you remember what happened back in 2022 and 23, but especially in 22. And in the summer of 22, everybody was just freaking out. All right, same thing's going to happen again in 26. Remember, it's a 4-year cycle. So we'll reach the top in 25, just like we did in 21. We'll reach the bottom in 26, just like we did in 22. And then everybody's going to be hyped up again here in 28, just like they are here in 24. It does not change. It's very interesting how it works because it's all based on demand and human nature. The difference is each cycle, more and more demand comes in, especially now that we have institutions. So I expect this to be a very interesting 18 months coming in, and I'm looking forward to it. And get ready for the ride. I'm going to get ready and turn this back over to Brandon because he's got a lot to talk about today. I'll be around for Q&A, and if anybody has any questions about it, want to talk more about it, I'd love to talk about it. But it's going to be exciting to follow around. I appreciate your time and letting me talk about this.
All right. Well, thank you, Professor Sistrunk, for that information. And as you guys see, I told you he's a pro in that. You actually answered one of my questions that I was going to ask you in that was that the first time ever we're seeing the run up to the Bitcoin having Bitcoin just exploding, that it didn't happen like that before, but the ETFs. And you said something else important. You said, get your hands on these Bitcoin now, or else in the future, the only way you're going to get them is through these big institutions that's buying them all up right now, like BlackRock, Fidelity, Grayscale. I mean, they're spending millions of dollars a day buying Bitcoin, accumulating it, and they're waiting for the dip. They're waiting for all of you to sell your coins so that they can buy the dip and snatch it all up. But as Professor Sistrunk said, this is generational wealth, generational wealth. And congratulations to you guys making the choice to come here to listen and learn. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to go over our lesson that's a follow-up from last night. And our lesson tonight is going to be about what is actually blockchain. What is the technology that's making this even possible? A lot of times people are mixing up Bitcoin and blockchain like it's the same thing. And I did that too in the early days when I didn't know what this was. I just thought Bitcoin blockchain was the same, and it's not. It's Bitcoin is the result, is the reward for creating the blockchain. So let's jump on into that. So let me get, I gotta share screen and get this up and going. Okay. So what is the blockchain? Well, a blockchain is a tamper-proof encrypted database secured by cryptography, which is the study of encryption, that acts as an accounting ledger keeping track of digital assets. Instead of being maintained by a single server like traditional databases, blockchains are decentralized and maintained by a distributed network of computers around the world. This database tracks every Bitcoin in the network and each transaction since the very first Bitcoin. You can think of Bitcoin as an accounting system. Through the blockchain, it is a way of recording transactions and value digitally in an open and distributed self-clearing ledger. Beginners to cryptocurrency sometimes hear the word blockchain and think that the term blockchain is synonymous with Bitcoin, like I did. However, this would be like saying that smartphone technology and Apple have the same meaning. The relationship between Bitcoin and blockchain is like the relationship between Facebook and the internet. Bitcoin is based on blockchain technology and could not exist without blockchain technology. The idea of digital money is not something that's new. This has been around for decades, but the technology was not available to make this a reality. Blockchain is the technology that's making it a reality. Blockchain technology preceded Bitcoin, and blockchain technology could exist without Bitcoin. Just like Facebook is on the internet, Bitcoin is on the blockchain. Facebook cannot work without the internet. Bitcoin couldn't work without its blockchain. And I practiced sharing this with my father to get him to understand and to get it. And I said, think of it like this, Dad. When he was a little boy, my grandfather would build him remote control racetracks and trains. And he was like the popular kid in the neighborhood back in the early days of Compton, California, because he had a remote train set and race car set. They thought he was rich. No, my grandpa just was an engineer, and he built it because he couldn't afford to buy my dad one. And so my dad has kept that tradition. Every year at Christmas time, he gets a 17-foot Christmas tree, and he's got a train set that goes around it. And my boys, when they were little, they loved that. Every time it's Christmas, go to Pop-Pop's house and play with the train. So I said, Dad, blockchain is the railroad track. Okay. I said, you get that? He said, yeah. I said, Bitcoin is the train. What happens if you remove the railroad track? Can the train go anywhere? He said, no. But I said, if you remove the train itself, is the railroad track still there? And you can put another train on it? He said, yeah. I said, that's how it works. The train track is blockchain. The train itself is Bitcoin. Let's get a visual image in our minds. So picture this. There is a digital block that's created on the internet. Inside that block is data. For cryptocurrencies, text data of a list of transactions is inside of each block. For NFTs, text data detailing ownership of digital assets is inside of each block. Every time a new block is created, it is linked or chained back to the previous block. So you have a series of blocks full of data, all chained together to each other. Another way to visualize it is like this. Picture each block as a page in a book. The data inside each block are the words on the page, and the chain is the book's spine that holds all the pages together. There are various different cryptocurrencies, each with its own blockchain. For the blockchains of cryptocurrencies, the data inside each block is a detailed record of transactions involving that specific cryptocurrency. Basically, each block is one page in a digital ledger. So in other words, think of a digital file. And when that file fills up, it is now closed. And so a new digital file opens up that's blank, and all transactions go on that new file until it fills up. Then that's closed. Then another one opens up. It's like a link. Another way to look at this is I do not believe in saving anything on my laptop hard drive or my PC hard drive. I have external hard drives for everything. And then what I do is, for example, like these, when one fills up, I unplug it, I plug the new one in, and I start filling up the next one. And I have backups to all these. It's the same thing. That's why it's called blockchain. So you can get that image in your head, what that actually means. So how are new blocks added to the chain? In order to add a new block to a chain, a complex math equation must be solved. For Bitcoin's blockchain, basically somebody needs to guess a number between 1 and 4 billion in order to add a block to the blockchain. This requires a vast amount of computing power, as well as some time, roughly 10 minutes per block on Bitcoin's blockchain. Remember last night I shared my first time hearing about Bitcoin was in 2010 when some nerd on TV was mining Bitcoin with his home computers. And I was like, what are you doing? Well, he had homemade rigs he used for gaming. And when he got a new rig, he took the old one and plugged it in and used the same power to mine Bitcoin. So every 10 minutes, a new block, or roughly 10 minutes, a new block is created on Bitcoin's blockchain. The individual or group who guesses the correct number creates the new block and is awarded 6.25 Bitcoins. This process is called mining. So anytime you hear people talking about mining, you're like, what does that mean? What is that? Think of it, the gold rush. How do you get gold? Well, you got to go and mine it. You got to dig it out of the ground. You got to refine it. You got to mint it before you can put it up for sale. Same process here. A myth is that Bitcoin is made up out of thin air. Donald Trump even said that a few years ago. He's changing his tune today. Just a couple of days ago, he's saying, hey, I don't have a problem with Bitcoin. Yeah, I can care one way or the other. It seems to be popular. People are using it to buy stuff. That is a huge change from what he used to say. So this is not something that is going away, going anywhere. It is not just made out of thin air. This money is made out of thin air. There's nothing backing it. We're off the gold standard. But Bitcoin is proof of work, which means It takes computer power, energy, software, and somebody who owns all of that to put the manpower in to build the blockchain. And how do you incentivize somebody to do that? How do you incentivize them to use their time, resources, and energy and money to build the blockchain? Well, they're rewarded in the form of Bitcoin. That's the reward. The fact that it is so difficult to add a new block makes it so that no one organization can ever add too many blocks in a row. It would be like the same person winning the lottery over and over again. The fact that blocks are so difficult to create is also the reason why they are so tamper-proof and immutable. So now we know what a blockchain is, how blocks are created, and what each block is filled with, a digital ledger of transactions. Now, we're in the season of Bitcoin halving. So every time a block is created now is 6.25 Bitcoin. When the halving takes place, a couple of weeks, we're going to be down to half of that. 3.125 or something Bitcoin will be the result. So the same amount of work and energy that a person is using to mine, you're now getting half the tokens. So why would they continue to do so if they're getting paid half? Well, think about what's happening here. You are now have less amount of Bitcoin on the market. And when you have less Bitcoin, the value goes high. The demand is higher than the supply. So now, even though you're only getting 3 Bitcoin now, each Bitcoin is worth more than it was when you were getting 6. And it's so complicated today, so difficult that no one person can get a mining rig at home and mine Bitcoin. It's not possible. Right now, Bitcoin is done in mining pools, organizations, even governments. What do you think North Korea is doing? Well, one, they're stealing it, but they're also mining. So that doesn't mean that you can't mine. There's many other projects and tokens out there, and most mining today is done through something called nodes, and that's a topic for another day. So to understand the significance of blockchain technology, we must go back in time and look at the ledgers and their function. A ledger is simply a documented record of transactions. A blockchain is a ledger. What is that? A documented record of transactions. Since the dawn of civilization, people have been trading things with one another. Humanity wouldn't exist if it weren't for the fact that humans trade with one another. Even before the invention of currency, tribes and early civilizations would often keep a record of who traded what with who, dating as far back as 5000 BC in Mesopotamia. People used clay tablets as primitive ledgers to record transactions of crops and animals. I want you to think back. Before there were banks, who were the wealthiest people in the land? Go back to the Bible. Jesus and his 12 disciples. His disciples were not poor men. The whole point was walk away from all of your possessions and come follow me. That was the sacrifice. What were their professions before they became disciples? Fishermen or tax collectors? Well, what if you wanted to trade products and goods and you're on a boat and you're coming to a new port, a new city, and you go to the port, the harbor master or the dock master, and they say, all right, check in. What goods are you bringing in? How much? What's the value of it? And all that. And then when you're ready to leave, the harbor master says, okay, how much did you sell? What do you have left? Well, why do they do that? Because now you got to pay the tax. And only the harbor master is recording these on a ledger, recording everything. Now, this is where the whole industry of bribing came in. Because what if that harbor master didn't like you? What if While you were in town, you decided to mess around with the harbor master's daughter or his wife, and he found out about it. He could really screw you. So he could erase some information on that ledger and write something else in. And you have no recourse because it's your word against the harbor master who has all the power. This is why you had caste systems back in the day. The only ones who had the records were the people in power. Ledgers such as these would also be used to keep track of debts owed, so it was important that they were kept in a safe place to avoid tampering or damage. Ledgers were kept safe inside of guarded temples and palaces, which were the seeds of the first banks. Those of you who love Lord of the Rings. No, wait. Not Lord of the Rings. Oh, good grief. What was the latest one with HBO and oh, my head just went blank. Anyways, the Iron Throne. It's on the tip of my tongue and it's not kicking me. You guys know what I'm
Game
talking.
of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Good grief. I couldn't believe I couldn't get that. Game of Thrones. The Iron Bank. Remember the Lannisters? They always pay their debts. But they didn't have all the money. The power was in the Iron Bank. And they ran the land. No amount of what army can you have if you can't pay the army? The Iron Bank back in those days. So that was the seeds of the first bank. Later, banks took over the role of calculating and maintaining ledgers. They kept track of transactions as well as debts owed and kept these records safe. Except at this point, people were using currency and no longer bartering with crops, animals, and other goods. Bartering. My grandpa, he was the king of being able to barter with somebody and haggle for the price. He never paid full price for nothing, even in grocery stores. And I still haven't figured out how he was doing that. My earliest memories, he never paid full price at the grocery store. But back in those days, they knew each other. They all worked. My grandma grew vegetables and fruit in the backyard. Oh, well, she needed somebody to come and fix the plumbing, but she traded some food for it. Somebody's car broke down. Somebody in the neighborhood was a mechanic. Somebody needed the roof was leaking. Somebody in the neighborhood knew how to fix the roof, and they bartered with each other. My grandpa lived at the Compton swap meet. Never paid full price. But now, this is why he never trusted banks. But now banks are keeping and calculating and maintaining all of the ledgers currently. So the modern banking system. So for centuries, people have trusted banks to keep and maintain ledgers, records where people agree with the information in a bank's ledgers and trust that the information is safe from tampering or damage. Do you know what a ledger is right now? Look at your bank statement for last month. That's a ledger. It's telling you every transaction you've ever made in the past month. That's your statement. When you buy something from the grocery store and they give you a receipt, that's a ledger. And two people have that receipt, or actually three. You, the merchant, and the bank all have a record that transaction took place. But what if you lose your receipt? How do you prove that you did the transaction? That's why you got to keep these ledgers safe. Now, because everyone agrees with the information in the bank's records, banks are often used as an intermediary for transactions between two parties. When you swipe your debit card at the grocery store and the point of sale terminal states that the transaction has gone through, the grocery store trusts that you've paid. The grocery store trusts your bank's records. Think about, how do they know you got money in the bank? Because the bank is telling them, yeah, we vouched for him. He got the money. Both parties involved in a transaction trust that the records of the bank are accurate. If the bank says the transfer has successfully been completed, then the buyer and the seller can both trust and agree that the money has in fact gone through. What are the pros and cons of using banks and their ledgers? Banks add a level of trust and security to transactions, and this is why banks have been around for hundreds of years. The downside to this is that banks and their governments have the power to monitor and control people's money. Wait, what did we talk about in Crypto Talk this morning? What was our main topic? CBDCs. What's the main fear? The government having the power to monitor and control our money. Well, banks have that power to a certain extent as well. And then they get into your pockets with fees, especially when transferring money international and or converting fiat currencies. It's like you work a 9-to-5 job, you get paid, but you get a direct deposit into your bank for convenience. So you don't have to have a check. Then you got to go into the bank branch or the ATM and deposit it. They can deposit it directly. Yet you set up a bank account, that's not free. They're charging you a fee for the privilege of them holding your money. And then they charge you a monthly fee on that. They charge you transactional fees. They charge you ATM fees. They charge you the right to breathe fee. They charge you walk into our bank branch fee. Papa needs a brand new shoe fee. Whatever fee they can think of, they charge you. But they take your money and they use your money to invest. They only need to keep 10% of your account in-house. They're making money off of your money and then pay you maybe 1 or 2% at the end of the year. That's a joke. That's crazy. Marnita did a trade just the other day, more than 2% in 5 minutes. Yet the bank wants to give you 2% in a year. So the issue is, for centuries, we have been trusting banks to keep records of who owns and owes what. But at the same time, we've been sacrificing some of our privacy, independence, and percentages of our wealth in fees. But what if there was a better way? What if there was some form of modern technology that could help us get the best of both worlds? What if we could have security and trust, while at the same time also have a financial privacy and autonomy? We would need a secure ledger that everyone could trust and agree on, and that wasn't able to be controlled, interfered with, or manipulated by any person or institution. Enter blockchain technology. Blockchains are distributed and publicly accessible. A blockchain is a digital ledger, but it is a ledger that everybody has access to, yet nobody can tamper with or control. Historically, ledgers and records have been centralized, locked up, and stored by one institution that has access and control. For cryptocurrencies, the entire ledger is out in the open and accessible to everybody, which means it's now built on trust of math, the system, not an individual organization or business. It's open to everyone, which means you can't lie about it. The harbor master can't erase something and put in some new numbers to screw you over. Blockchains are anonymous. When you look at the Bitcoin blockchain, you will notice that you don't see the names, email addresses, or any information about the sender and the receiver. All you see are transaction hashes and wallet addresses. It is almost impossible to determine someone's identity based on these strings of random letters and numbers. This is the paradox of Bitcoin. Everybody can see all of the transactions, but nobody can see who is doing the transactions. Now we're going back to old school. I can take this $100 or $20 bill and go to the store and buy something, but there's no record outside of the receipt I get, and that receipt doesn't have my name on it. There's no record to say what I bought, when, how much, or where. That's what crypto does. See, if I use my debit card, oh yeah, then there's a record because that debit card is tied to me because it's using a centralized system. But if I use cash, There's no way to track that. What is the biggest thing for those who've been paying attention to news that talked about this? The Georgia case. Donald Trump's case in Georgia and Fani Willis. Did Fani Willis have a relationship with the DA she hired to prosecute Donald Trump? Well, they're trying to say, well, no, they admitted that they had a relationship, but when did they have this relationship? Was it before or after 2022? Fani says it was after 22. Donald Trump's lawyers are trying to say it was before. They're saying that she hired him, paid him an exorbitant salary, and then he used that money to take her on lavish vacations, which can be seen as a conflict of interest. She says, oh, no, 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 no. We split this 50-50. Whatever he paid for, I paid him back. They say, do you have a record of that, doing that? Well, no. Why not? I paid him back in cash. What? And they're like, what do you mean? Nobody uses cash nowadays. So no, 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 no. You have to understand how I was raised. I always have cash on me in case of emergencies and for any situation. So I just gave them the cash. And it was hard for them to understand that. But if you come from our community, this is Black History Month. We've been screwed over by the banks, the older generation. In fact, a lot of the banks wouldn't even allow us to bank at the bank. So we're always used to having to have our own stash of cash or get out bags. If we had to bug out for any reason, we had our cash. Grandpa, whether it's under your sofa, under your mattress, buried in the backyard, like Pirates of the Caribbean. Bury your treasure. My mom even taught me young, there were still payphones when I was a teenager. But she even said her grandpa, every time her and her sisters went out, made sure they had a couple quarters, dimes, and nickels on them so that they can always call from a payphone home if anything goes wrong. Think about it now. We don't leave the house without our cell phones, but can you imagine leaving the house with no cell phone, no GPS, and just a Thomas guide to get to where you need to go? Make sure you had a couple quarters on you to get to the payphone. But there's no record when you're using cash. Bitcoin, though, it is recording every transaction, but they don't know who you are. We can see, even when Bitcoin is stolen or any crypto is stolen or hacked, we can see where the money's going. What you don't know is who it is. Blockchains are decentralized. Did I say that right, Thomas Guide, or was it something else? I think this is my later times. The blockchains are decentralized. For almost every major cryptocurrency, nobody owns or controls the ledger. The blockchain is available for anyone in the world to see, no matter where they are. Last night I shared that I heard Bill Gates say in 2014 that Bitcoin is freedom. Why? Blockchain is available for anyone in the world. Nobody owns or controls it. Having a decentralized ledger plus the inherent security of a blockchain eliminates the need for an institution, bank, or government to be the middleman. Having a transparent distributed ledger, blockchain. Now, I want you to be familiar with these two terms, distributed ledger technology and blockchain. You're going to hear both out there in the Ethernet. The crypto community calls it blockchain first. The non-crypto community, banks, governments, businesses, they call it distributed ledger technology. It's the same thing. The reason why they say it differently is because when you say blockchain, you automatically think Bitcoin. Every business wants the technology, but not all of them like the fact of Bitcoin. They like centralized. They want a centralized blockchain that they can control. So just remember when you hear that, it's the same thing. An entire 31% of adults in the world do not have access to a bank account, but if they have access to an internet connection, they can access cryptocurrency. So what did I say yesterday? You only need three things: a cell phone, access to the internet, and a willingness to learn. Blockchain blocks require majority agreement to be valid. What is the thing that Larry Fink keeps saying over and over and over again about the blockchain and decentralized, the whole nature of that, tokenization, smart contracts, DeFi? Because he says it is the first fully democratic system. Everybody has a vote. Blockchain blocks require majority agreement to be valid. What makes a blockchain so secure is the fact that it is distributed. There are multiple live versions of each blockchain. If somebody is able to tamper with even one block on this live version of the blockchain, then everyone else will instantly see that it doesn't match up with the other live versions, and it will be discarded. As long as more than 50% of the live blockchain versions or nodes agree on something, the versions that are different are identified as false and ignored. And this happens very quickly. So what makes a blockchain secure? Well, blockchain blocks are essentially immutable. Every 10 minutes, a new block is created on the Bitcoin blockchain. This block is filled with data of recent Bitcoin transactions. The data in the block shows a list of wallet addresses that have sent Bitcoin to other wallet addresses, as well as the amount of Bitcoin sent. Once the block has been mined and the data is written inside, the block is closed and becomes added to the end of the blockchain. At that point, it is almost impossible to edit, modify, or remove. It's like writing in wet cement. And once the cement hardens, the information written will be there forever. The block is basically immutable. Is it possible to hack the blockchain? Well, if one individual or organization were able to gain control of 51% of the computing power of a blockchain, then they would be able to do what's called double spend their coins. That means they could spend their coins, then delete that transaction and spend the coins again. I learned this technique at Morehouse College. Now, Morehouse didn't teach me this. We were broke students. You know, my dad sent me down there with, I think, like $50 in the bank before I added my own money because I was working in the summertime, a couple $100. And my dad said, hey, look, I'm paying for your room and board. They're putting the roof over your head and you're getting 3 meals a day. They feed you breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're good. All you need to do is eat, sleep, and go to class. So we were broke college students. And there's two things we figured out how to do. And I'm not saying I'm ashamed to say, but like the vending machines, we figured out how to tape a string on the dollar, stick it in the machine, and then put what we want and pull that dollar right back out again. Oh yeah, but we had to be careful with it because we couldn't just clean out one vending machine. We had to do it on multiple vending machines, so it didn't trigger any alert. Then there's something down there called MARTA, which is the subway train system. And you had MARTA tokens and things that you could use. We figured out how when you put the token in and the turns stop, if you don't push it all the way and you just leave it right, and it took practices of doing this, right before it clicks, then a second person can come behind you and a third person behind you. So we got so good at it that one MARTA token, we could fit 5 people through on just the cost of one. And we had to figure things out to survive down there. That was in the 90s. I think it's kind of impossible to do that kind of stuff today. I don't know. I don't know what those kids are doing. But that's called double spending. So same thing with Bitcoin. If someone was able to delete the transaction they just made and then try to spend it again. To amount a successful 51% attack on a large cryptocurrency such as Bitcoin would require an astronomical amount of computing power, costing billions or tens of billions of dollars. Thinking of Morehouse is sparking up memories. I was known as the movie man in Carter Hall. That was a dormitory that housed AUC students, Georgia Tech. It was right across the street from Brave Stadium. It used to be a hotel. I think it's turned back into a hotel. One of our friends worked at Blockbuster Video, and what he would do was after the break room, there was a door to the back of the Blockbuster. He would toss out a bunch of videos. We would go into the back, pick those videos up, go home real quick. We had two VCRs set up on a TV. We would copy the videos and then return the Blockbuster video back so that he could put it back on the shelf before store closed and they did inventory. Then we were able to take a VHS and put 3 movies on one tape. We made a database of all our movies, made copies, and then we sold movies to everybody in the dorm for like $2 or $3 a tape. You get for like $3 or $5, you get 3 movies. And on a Friday night with a whole bunch of broke college kids that couldn't afford to go anywhere and they want to entertain their girlfriends or whatnot, and then I would have movie nights in my dorm room. We would have in one room, think about a hotel room, I'd have like 25 people up in there. Movie nights. And I'm not talking about a big screen TV. We're talking a little TV. But we had movie. Oh man, oh yeah, we figured out how to make some money. League. Oh dang, I can say that's legal. Yeah, we were getting over on Blockbuster. Legalish was what I'll call it. There are estimated to be over 1 million Bitcoin miners in the world today. Somebody would need to generate the computing power of over 1 million other miners to be able to temporarily tamper with the creation of the current Bitcoin block. I think Marnita asked a question about this last night. Will there ever be technology that can do this? Yeah, kind of. But a 51% attack on Bitcoin would be outlandishly expensive. It's like it would cost $1 billion or billions of dollars to tamper with one block that's only worth a couple of $100,000, which would be caught. Why would you do that? There's only one person on the planet that I believe has the resources to do it and the crazy enough to do it just to prove a point, and that's probably Elon Musk. He bought Twitter to prove a point. What, 40-something billion dollars just to buy Twitter and change the name to X and run it. Oh, I can't say if he'd run it into the ground, but it's having a whole lot of problems. But why would you do that? Why would you spend billions of dollars just to bring, yeah, well, I hacked Bitcoin blockchain. Well, yeah, what do you want, a cookie? It got corrected. So that's not going to happen. Now, because blockchain technology is by nature secure, anonymous, immutable, and decentralized, it's being eyed for other applications beyond only cryptocurrency. So there is one miner for every 4 Bitcoins or so? No, it doesn't work like that. There's more than, because it's different now, it's mining pools now, but more than 1 million at least master nodes out there that's recording the blockchain, and there's smaller nodes that's also to do that. For example, Vara's SCL technology will have thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of people on that network having master nodes. Yet when it sends transactions to the Bitcoin blockchain, it's only sending it as one transaction, where it makes it look like it's only one miner. So yeah, you can't look at it as one miner for every 4 Bitcoins. It's a little more complicated than that. Now, what are other applications that could be used to cast votes? What about, to use for blockchain? What about using it to cast votes? This is election year. This, in my entire life, and maybe in all of American history, our elections are being challenged like never before. We have a large percentage of the population that truly believes our election system is broken and that we can't trust the results. I'm not here to debate neither here nor there. That's just a fact. So there's a solution to this. The solution that everybody could trust is if you put voting on the blockchain. Put it on the blockchain. Therefore, you're not going to have any dead people voting, illegals voting, people voting twice, people moving to different districts and voting multiple times. None of the shenanigans can take place because it's on the blockchain and we see every single one. Unfortunately, as I stated yesterday, that I believe blockchain technology is going to disrupt every single industry on the planet. That is true, even voting. But I think in America, it will be the last thing that gets transferred over. Eventually it will, but it will be the last because both political parties kind of like the system the way it is for different reasons. So any politician that said, no, we shouldn't put voting on the blockchain, look at them sideways. Why not? Why are you against voting being on the blockchain? Why are you against it being legal, what's the word I want to use? Transparent. We're able to see every single one. It eliminates fraud. What are you doing fraudulent? Why don't you? And I'm going to tell you the argument that will be used. No, well, it's been a time-honored tradition in the United States that voting rights and elections are locally based, and each state and jurisdiction can come up with their own laws. That's the one thing about the American election system. It is not universal, especially with the primaries. Every state and jurisdictions have different things. They've got caucuses, they've got the primaries and all this. I mean, it's wacky, but it's their independence. So that's the argument that will be used initially, not to put voting on the blockchain. But if you want to make it universal and fair, put it on the blockchain. What about using a blockchain to keep track of medical data? I've got a course just on this, and this is what's the word I want to use? Revolutionary. Revolutionary. I was watching some sad information. You know, the whole Hamas and Israeli war going on, and in Gaza for the last 6 months or so. It's been that long. That the women have been marking on their children's, on their legs, in permanent ink, either their name and blood type, and because they don't know if a bomb's going to drop and things like that, and their entire medical system has collapsed. So there is no records of vaccinations, of treatments, of what the children are doing. So they're writing permanently on their children's bodies while they're alive, just in case something happens, or something happens to the parent and the child is too young and the doctors don't know what issues does this child may have. But being able to put this type of information on the blockchain is revolutionary. And I don't have time to go into that in more detail tonight. Using a blockchain to keep track of, especially this, I'll give another example. And I shared this before. This is Black History Month, but what kind of shook me years ago, my parents took a trip to Paris, France. And for whatever reason, my mother lost or misplaced whatever her passport. And she was at the U.S. Embassy to get all new information, and they required, proof of who you are. And they said that we could fax from the United States to the U.S. Embassy the information. And so she called me to go to their house and go in. Like I said, you guys should have this, your go bag. So it's a go bag that's got all your important documents that if there's a fire or anything, you can run out the house with it. And so I go into my mom's go bag to find her birth certificate so I could scan it and fax it over to the embassy. And I just noticed on it, birth certificate, mom born 1954. And it had female race Negro. I was like, what? Did I see that? Negro? What the hell? I realized it wasn't that long ago. Just my mom. She was born in before civil rights. But if this stuff was on the blockchain, my mom would have access to that instantaneous. All that information. It can be private and secure. medical data. Supply chain, keeping track of the supply chain. What if you go to the grocery store and you want to get some vegetables and fruit? How many times have we heard about recalls? You don't know where that fruit's going. You're relying on the side of the box, it says what the expiration date is. You're relying on that. What if you're able to scan a QR code and you're able to tell where that fruit was planted, what country it was planted in, when was it picked, how long was it in transit during the supply chain, how long has it been sitting on the shelf in your grocery store before it got into your hand? The supply chain is also massive industry, massive. And we might have some members from SEAM on here tonight. I did a lesson a couple of weeks ago about AI technology and how AI is taking over also the supply chain. So not only is all of this going to be on the blockchain, but it's going to be run by artificial intelligence. It's going to replace jobs. That's a topic for another day. Using a blockchain to store authentic pieces of digital art, NFTs. I think we all heard about NFTs. I'll be doing a lesson on NFTs. Using a blockchain to store personal identification information. Well, I should have used that one to share about my mom's story. Using a blockchain to store important deeds, such as for land or a home. This is also huge. You know, deeds and stuff is an illiquid asset. You can't take your deed and go and buy something at the grocery store. Who owns the piece of property? I shared the other day how my grandfather passed away more than 20 years ago, 27 years ago. And we just got a notification of property we didn't know he had. My dad thought he knew all the property, but they sent information in the mail and a copy of the deed. My grandfather's name on it. You never know these deeds, but what if it's on the blockchain? Then there's no dispute. Even when people pass away, what's their will and testament? They didn't have one. Now you got family. Who was it? I think James Brown took him 6 months to bury him because the family was fighting over his estate. You know, who owns what? Who gets what? It's like me and Marnita fighting over something our great-grandmother left. Who has the right to it? Me or her or our other cousins? I always say me because I'm the oldest. I get it. But if everything's on the blockchain, then everything is identified and stored for long-term posterity. You got to think of, like, we're going back to the Mesopotamia days where they kept records on clay tablets that you can't chisel out. It's there forever. You can't erase it. That's how we know our ancient history. I've been on that tip lately, studying ancient history. History older than the Bible. But anyways, blockchain technology is going to disrupt every single industry, whether you like it or not, believe it or not, trust it or not. Your opinion of it is irrelevant. This is happening. As a disclaimer, this information is intended for educational and training purposes only and should not be construed as investment advice. As with all financial decisions, you should contact your licensed financial advisor before investing in any financial instrument. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of our lesson for tonight. And you know what we're going to do? We're now going to move into Q&A section. And since I did make this public, I'm not going to cut off the live stream. So those of you that's watching on Facebook, just like last night, because I was in a good mood tonight, you are allowed to listen and follow us on the Q&A side. The only people asking questions are the VIP members we have here. So with that, stay on. I'm going to turn it over to our hostess, Miss Marnita Casa, to handle the Q&A.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right, everyone. Since we're in the Q&A session, we only have 3 things that we ask of you. The first thing is, please do not unmute yourself until you are called upon. The second one is, we do ask only 2 questions unless we have time for more. And the third one is, there are no silly questions. So please, whatever questions you have or aha moments, raise your hand and share it with us. Okay, I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so sometimes the blockchain will confuse me when it comes to the nodes. So I think I might be overthinking it, but when it comes to the master nodes, those are they would be considered almost special, right? Because they're running the full blockchain 24 hours or something to that. And that's what makes them different from the rest of the nodes.
Well, we're talking, there's only one node on Bitcoin, and that's the master node on Bitcoin itself. The other projects, other tokens, other coins have their own versions of mining. Some is mining the same way Bitcoin is. Others is doing it through airdrops where you're not actually mining. They already have all the tokens and they're just releasing it a certain way. So no mining is being done and it's universal. So each blockchain has their own version of what nodes are and what nodes do. Now, the term node just means you don't have to have the GP PC desktop computer hardware and plug it into your wall. A node can be run on a software program hosted by a third party or just a software you download onto your computer. And you just got to have your computer on, and that can run the node. And so it's much more down, what's the word I want to use? Powered down version of Bitcoin.
Okay, I'm still a little confused. I'm not going to take up much time, but I will ask you those questions later. Okay, Miss Judy, I see your hand raised. The floor is all yours.
Hey everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you can.
Okay, wonderful. I just, my question I have is for a Professor Sistrunk. And with regards to his pi cycle, is there a specific mathematical formula that he uses for that? And what date does he expect we will see the high for Bitcoin coming up this this next halving, especially with the different variables that the ETFs have thrown in the works?
All right, that's a couple of good questions. First of all, let me say that I wish I could take credit for the pi cycle chart, but I can't, or the pi cycle indicator. Let's put it that way. It's an indicator that was created by someone else, and they were able to find that when two, let's call it, you have these two charts, like the 200-day moving average and the 90-day moving average. So you have two moving averages. When those moving averages cross, that's when either the top, called the pi cycle top, or the bottom was reached. I can't remember the exact formulas, but what's interesting about it, the reason they call it pi cycle is if you take the two moving averages and divide them out, it comes out to pi. So that's how the guy figured it out and used it. It really, and that's so strange that as he worked through it, he came up with these two moving averages, one to show when we reach the top, one to show when we reach the bottom. And in both cases, if you take those moving averages and take the numbers and divide them out, you come up with pi. What's that? Pi is like, what, 3.14 something? So it's not my indicator. As a matter of fact, it's free and available through TradingView or some of these other charting services. And you just click on the pi cycle indicator, and it'll follow along, and it'll eventually tell you when when it reaches the top and when it reaches the bottom. Very interesting. I would say from the standpoint of when are we going to reach the top this time, I'm going to guarantee that we're probably going to reach it within 18 months. It's always occurred within 18 months. My gut, and again, this is just me, because of ETFs, the last cycle from 20 to 24, when we reached the pi cycle top early in 2021. It was April of 2021, which was the early, one of the early times. And one reason people think it happened was because the government was handing out all of that EDIL and PPP money, and people were buying crypto with it. And this time, I think it may happen again because of ETFs. There's an easy way for people to get in onto that Bitcoin cycle when it starts running. That fear of missing out, people are gonna be pouring money in, trying to get a 2x or a 5x or a 3x. What you're gonna hear people talking about how Bitcoin's gonna go to 1 million. It's gonna go to 2 million. It happened back in 2021. It's gonna happen again. But this time, institutions and big money people can pour money in. Easy. Just call their investment house or group, whoever they're using, and have them buy ETF. So I think it's going to come pretty early, and it's going to shock people. In 2021, when it occurred, that was the first time where I was actually investing, because remember, I started in 19. So in March of 2021, I think, no, let me say April of 2021, when the pi cycle indicator went off, it shocked me because it was at about $58,000, and everybody was saying it was going to $200,000. And I said, wait a minute, what happened? And I just didn't believe it. I said, oh, that's pi cycle. I guess it must be wrong because this and that, and you didn't listen. And luckily, it peaked again in October, November, and I listened that time. The indicator didn't go off, but I said, no, I need to go out and get my money out of here because, I think it's getting ready to fall. So I think it's gonna run. It's gonna come pretty early, and then we'll have to see, will it come back again? What's gonna happen?
Well, I'm pretty certain. Thank you. It does, but I'm pretty certain that it will eventually fall again.
Yes.
But here's the thing. This time we're better educated and we know what to do when it does start to fall. We can tether. Whereas before, it's funny. Brandon says this course is for people who are either beginners or they have all the answers. And I have to consider myself one of those people who thought I had all the answers. But after being educated by Brandon and his panelists, I realized not only did I not have all the answers, I didn't even know what the questions were, So, uh, yeah, but I mean, this time I know what to do this time, and like I, it's like why do we waste our time trying to look for the dips because it could go. We know where it's going to go,
That's
so
right.
just go get it. And like an idiot, the last few days I've been thinking, oh, it's going to pull back a little. Let me just wait till it pulls back, and it went the other way. So I remember this
That happened
morning
to
I
me.
woke up. I woke up this morning. I was about to make a purchase, and I forgot I had my VPN on, and the exchange wouldn't let me buy it because it listed me as being in the Netherlands. So I had to shut off my VPN, reveal my IP address so that I could actually pull the trigger on it. And just in those few seconds when I shut off the VPN, it went up even more. And I
Yep.
thought, oh, well, as soon as I buy it, I know it's going to drop, but that's okay because
That's right.
I know where it's going. So,
No, I did the same thing. I remember back in late 2020, early 2021, I had some money, and I said Bitcoin had just broke 20,000. I said I'm gonna sit and wait for it to go back maybe to 16 or 17 and get some. And then at the last minute, I said, "Nah, I better go get it now just in case." It never saw 17 or 18 again. It went from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 before I knew it. And I did the same thing 2 weeks ago. I was saying, I'm going to wait for it to drop maybe under 40. And the next thing I knew, it was closing in on 50. I said, I better go hurry up and get some. Because when it all boils down to it, it doesn't matter. When I was buying Bitcoin, trying to save, whether it was 20 or 18, didn't matter. It went to 56. It eventually went to 67. Did it matter whether I bought it at 18 or 20 when it was to 67? No, just make sure you buy it. And I'm saying the same thing now. Whether it's 57 or 47, it's not going to matter when one day it's 157. You just have to buy it.
I'm sitting here laughing at all those people who back when Bitcoin was $100 a coin were thought, oh, that's too expensive at $100 a coin.
That's right. Yeah, I remember people say $1,000. I ain't buying that for $1,000. I'll wait for it to get back down to 100. They still waiting.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Judy. Now, here's something to think about. BlackRock went from 0 to 122,600 Bitcoin in their possession in 6 weeks. What do you think their competition's going to do? They're already doing it. They are buying it all up as fast as they can. They don't care what the price of it is right now. So good mention, Judy. Go ahead, Ms. Casa.
Thank you, Miss Judy. Thank you, Professor, for that answer. Okay, Miss Demetrius, thank you so much for your patience.
No problem. I think my question was already answered just through what Judy was asking, because I was just thinking the same thing. Because it was going up, to just wait till it go back down, because I was thinking if I buy some more now, it's going to take my dollar cost average up, and it's it's only like, I think when I bought it, it was like maybe 25,000 or something like that. I can't remember, but now it's 50. So I said, well, maybe I should wait. But I guess if I don't buy it now, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter based on what you guys are just saying. Just get in and get some Bitcoin, no matter how high it goes, or you just wait right now and wait to go down, look just a little bit more, or just go ahead and just keep buying however you want. That's what I'm understanding.
Remember the dollar cost averaging method is it doesn't matter what the price is right now. You're looking at where it's going to be down the road. You just set yourself up with a budget, just like you have with a savings account, whether it's $100 a week, $50 a month, 500, 10,000, whatever you can afford, and just buy. That's how my mom doing. She's got her Coinbase account set up automatic that she's spending a certain amount of money every single month buying Bitcoin consistently. You just keep doing that, you'll be all right down the road.
I think that's what it was just stated earlier, is that you keep watching and you're like, okay, I'm gonna wait till it go down just a little bit more, then I'm gonna buy back in. But now I see now the importance of just buying it. And I remember you telling us that in the classes, that it doesn't matter, just pick a budget, or find your budget, find your how much you want to spend, and just keep doing that. So yeah, thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. I was getting kind of confused a little bit on that buying. Thank you.
Let me say one thing also. You're buying crypto for the long term. When you look at it, as I was saying earlier, it's not going to matter when the Bitcoin is at $600,000 a coin. Whether you bought it at 40 or 50 or 20 or 30, you're going to be in great shape. The fact is, you bought it.
Now there is a question.
And so Brandon's right. I buy it all day long.
Now there is a question in the I will answer from the Facebook group. 2 little questions here from Brenda. How can you tell what locations accept Bitcoin in your area? Well, every location that accepts Bitcoin, they've got a sign on their window saying, we accept Bitcoin. I remember the first time I started seeing that in my town, Round Town, or it says, we got a Bitcoin ATM, but we accept Bitcoin for payments. So just like you'll see signs that says we accept Visa you'll see those signs, or you can do a quick Google search and say what shops in my location are accepting Bitcoin, and that'll pop up. And your second question is Bitcoin comparable to 401k or like the Dow, as in you put your money in and you can gain or lose money? Yeah, kind of like that. It's just like Forex, but it's more like a house than it is a 401k. Because a 401k, depending on how the stocks go or Forex, you can lose that money and it's gone. With Bitcoin, the only way you lose is when you sell. Just like your house. If you bought your house for $500,000 and 2 years later you want to sell it, but the property value is now only worth $400,000, if you sell the house at $400,000, you just lost $100,000 value. If you wait until the market turns around and it's been positive, now your house is worth $800,000. If you sell it at that price, you made a profit. So yes, it's an asset that can go up or down, and your tax form considers it capital gains on any profit there. So that's for you, Brenda. All right, so back to you, Ms. Casa.
Thank you so much. Okay, is there anyone else that has a question? Oh, I see, Miss Judy, you said you had one quick comment. Did you still?
Yes, actually, it was regards to the price, because I remember when I bought some Bitcoin back in 2019, and there was a purchase that needed to be made, but could only be made with crypto. And we bought in, and it was Bitcoin was at about 11,000, around there. It was like November of 2020, and then it went up to 17,000. And then it went up to 35,000. And I remember we had all bought a certain amount of Bitcoin in order to get ready to pull the trigger when it occurred. And during that time that we were waiting, those like couple of months, we found we had even, I think it was like a third more or double or so, I can't remember the exact amount, but I remember at one point it was like having my cake and eating it too, because I had bought a certain amount of Bitcoin and actually ended up spending more than that amount, and I still had that same amount worth of Bitcoin. I didn't really feel it until Bitcoin went down again. But the perspective I look at it is I look at these big companies like Riot out of Texas and these other companies that are buying up huge warehouses, and they're spending billions and billions of dollars on mining machines and filling these warehouses. And it's like, what do they know that the rest of the public does not? If they're willing to invest billions upon billions of dollars in order to mine potentially the last 2 million Bitcoin that are available, they must know something. So, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care what the price is. I know where it's going. And there's going to be a time when we're going to look back and we're going to laugh and we're going to think how wise we are that we even made the decision to purchase Bitcoin at $90,000 or $100,000 a coin because of where it's going.
That's right. Thank you, Judy.
Okay, back to you, Mr. Ivey.
All right, everybody. Well, that brings us to the end of our second night. So those of you on the Facebook group, thank you guys for plugging in. And we, again, extend an invitation for you to join our community and be on our VIP side so that you can be on Zoom with us and get your questions answered. And there's no such thing as a stupid question. We will be back tomorrow night with my Morehouse brother, Lamar Slater, Alumni of the Year, will be speaking and sharing his story. And our topic tomorrow night is going to be DeFi, decentralized finance. This is something everybody needs to be aware of because we only know centralized finance, but the future is going to be moving to decentralized finance. You've got to understand what it is, how it works, the basics. So that's going to be our topic for tomorrow night. So with that, thank you, Professor Sistron, for taking time out of your schedule and sharing with this community what you share with all of us Morehouse men over the years. And we definitely gonna have you back next month, because we're on the eve of Bitcoin halving. That's gonna happen just a couple of weeks after that. So thank you guys for your questions. We will be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, same channel. See you guys then. Bye-bye.